Weston-super-Mare in 2019. This is what it is today, but it wasn't always like this. Weston's history extends far past the 50s, the Victorians, the Normans, and as far back as the Iron Age.
Imagine bringing all the stones up here to construct that. Must have been a lot of work.
Today, our sunny seaside town loses thousands of visitors year after year. But what's to blame? Is it Weston's empty shops and hefty parking prices? Or is it just a natural progression? Do we hold enough events to keep people in? And is Weston nice enough for people to want to stay? These are the problems we're facing today, but let's remind ourselves of how Weston came to be.
People who come here think of Weston-super-Mare. It's a Victorian seaside town. They even think the name, Weston-super. Well, even the name is ancient. I mean, we know the name Weston-super-Mare is at least 13th century. Weston is a classic Saxon word. It's the ton in the west. Ton is the word for a place, so it's the place in the west. Super, which we now completely mispronounce thanks to the BBC, it's nothing to do, it's not a qualitative name, it's nothing to do with it being great. It's from the Latin above, super. You superimpose something, so it's on top of, it's above. What is it above? The next word, mare. So Weston was a little village by the sea, all huddled around St John's Church. So where we now have Grove Park, that would have been the original village.
We actually visited Uphill Church recently.
Right, yes.
Can you tell us a bit about its history?
It's a wonderful building. It's a Norman structure. Not all of that which is there now is Norman. Most of it's medieval. So the church was certainly there as a place of worship before the conquest. So before 1066, there would have been a church there. And it's only in very recent times, in Victorian times, that a new St Nicholas church was built down in the village, and the old church then became just a place of occasional worship and became more of a mortuary chapel for the cemetery surrounding it. And also the legend of Jesus himself coming here. Jesus' uncle, Jesus is somebody who we know lived, there's no doubting, the only doubt people have is about his divinity. As a person he lived, and we know that he died around about the age of 33. We know what happened in his birth, and we know about the last 3 years of his life. What happened in between, we have absolutely no idea. There's no record at all. One of the local legends is that when he was a teenager, his uncle, Uncle Joe, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a metal merchant, brought him here one day. Because Uncle Joe used to trade in metal on the Mendips. Charterhouse on Mendip, of course, the greatest Roman lead mine in Britain during the Roman Empire. So Uncle Joe comes here to trade in metal. Where would he have landed? Well, clearly at Uphill. So Canterbury, Rome, Glastonbury, they've got nothing on Uphill. Uphill is the place where Jesus came. Can I prove it? No. But can you prove me wrong? No. It's all part of legend. But it's a wonderful building full of atmosphere and very, very ancient.
So we know now that Weston has roots in very early history, but Weston was only a small village for a very long time. It wasn't until George III's visit to Weymouth and rumours of health benefits from being near the sea that seaside tourism became popularised. And it wasn't until the railways came that Weston began to boom.
When Brunel brought the railway here in 1841, that brought a completely different type of tourist. It brought the crowds. You could come from Bristol third class on the train. So if you were a Bedminster coal miner and you wanted a day out, you could come to Weston-super-Mare, which for them, that was revolutionary. And it's interesting that every decade after that, the population of Weston doubled. I mean, it was a massive rise in the population.
With the population increased and more visitors coming in every year, it was clear that Weston needed something more to keep them in than just a free walk on the beach, and Birnbeck was just that.
Birnbeck Pier was opened in 1867 and took 3 years to construct.
Birnbeck Pier is unique in that it's the only pier in Britain that links the mainland to an island. But of course its raison d'etre, its purpose no longer exists. It was built to bring steamers in, paddle steamers across the channel, which could bring the Welsh to Weston for days out, largely for days out rather than long periods. And of course it predates the Severn Bridge, predates motorways, predates cars. So the only way to get from Wales to England for a day out would be to come by paddle steamer. A number of things happened to stop that. In the 1960s, certainly post-Second World War, it became clear that the paddle steamers had seen the end of their days, unfortunately. And we now only have one sea-going paddle steamer left in the world.
Birnbeck Pier was closed to the public in 1994, and only special access is given these days. But even then, it's very dangerous. As you can see, it's very worn down.
Yes, I mean, it's sad to see the decline, not yet the death, but the decline of Birnbeck Pier. I mean, historically, hugely important. It was built by a person called Eugenius Birch, and he's the doyen of British seaside pier design. I mean, he is to piers what Brunel was to railways. He was the number one.
Well, the fondest memories I can have is being frightened that was going to fall through the gaps in the plank, walking down to the end. There wasn't an awful lot on there. There was a few bars and a few rides, but nothing like the Grand Pier.
Yeah.
But of course we used to catch the boat to Cardiff, to Lyme Regis, and Penarth from there. The Campbell's White Funnel Fleet, I think it was called. We used to visit the lifeboat station. That was there, on there. And it's very sad to see it as it is now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the tide was always in there. You could always see the sea, and you could see the sea rising up to the different layers of platform, different layers of jetties, if you like. Of course, it was used mainly in the early part of this century, well, last century, because in Wales there was no drinking allowed on Sundays, so the Welsh used to get on the boat over to the old pier and get drunk there, and then go back on the boat later on.
Oh, right.
And this is one of the reasons why they built the Grand Pier, because people were coming over from Wales, but that's where they were staying. They didn't go into the town at all to spend their money. They spent it at the old pier, then went home and lived it.
Birnbeck Pier was built as a jetty for the paddle steamers coming across from Wales, bringing the day trippers to Weston. So that had a transport function. The Grand Pier is one of those peculiar British inventions which had no purpose whatsoever other than a walkway across the sea. It was a British invention, and the Grand Pier epitomises it. It was a structure that went out into the sea. You could walk along it without bothering to get in the water. At the very end of it, there was an opera house. So people went to the Grand Pier Pavilion for shows, for the opera, for bands, and that was very popular. The pier, this was 1904, so it's an Edwardian structure. 1930, the pier then burnt down, and a new pier was built in the modern Art Deco style of the 1930s. And the owners of the pier realised the days of going to a seaside pier theatre had come to an end because there were cinemas being built everywhere. So fashions were changing. So the then owners of the pier realised the new fashion would be for amusements. So the next pavilion was an amusement arcade. And when that burnt down not that long ago, the new owners of the pier rebuilt it, but in a modern style, so it's very much of this era in its design. And inside it, a lot of modern electronic gadgets and amusements. The pier is an iconic British seaside symbol, and Weston probably has the most business astute pier running in the country.
How did it feel when you first found out that the Grand Pier was actually on fire back in, was it
2008?
Yeah.
Oh, shock. Really massive shock, because we went out into the back, well, Grandad phoned and just said the pier's on fire. Of course, the first thing you think, oh yeah, okay.
And you were only little at the time, and you could see the smoke and flame, well, not the flames, but the smoke from your back garden. A huge plume of smoke in the air.
Bellowing up into the sky, it was so sad. So sad. But a good thing has come out of it, because it is the way it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic place now.
Do you prefer how it is now to when it was back then?
I think they were both good in different ways.
It was good at the time, but I think it's fading. The superstructure seems to be fading. The white seems to be going. But I think it's better in the old days than it is now, certainly.
But the Grand Pier isn't the only attraction in Weston with a mixed popular opinion. How about the Tropicana? Once a swimming pool, forever a topic for debate.
Yeah, it was a big part of our lives, Tropicana. It was great fun.
When I was young, it was called the Pool, with the big diving board there, and that was great fun to go there on a weekend. There's nothing really there, rides or any slides or anything, but it was just a swimming pool, and I think that's really all we want.
Yeah.
It's a swimming pool.
It's really simple, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But obviously brought so many.
You can't seem to get that point. That's all we want. It's a swimming pool.
Yeah.
What do you think of what's there now? It's an ice skating rink at the moment. Not fun.
Not for me.
Not
for
you.
me at all. I'd rather it just be a Tropicana again, a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like many local authority investments, no money was actually pumped into it to maintain it. So from 1937 up until the day when it closed in the 1980s as the old pool, hardly any money was invested in it, and it gradually got into a state of disrepair. People's interests in outdoor swimming collapsed.
Well, I'm glad it's being used for something, because a few years ago the plan was to demolish the whole thing and turn it into hotels and things like that.
So, where do you see Weston going within the next 10 years?
It could do one of two things, couldn't it? It could go nowhere and carry on navel gazing and moaning and pretending that people remember something called the good old days, which I don't actually think ever existed, but people's memories are selective. And it would go nowhere. On the other side, we could be a little more adventurous in the way we perceive the future. And one of those more adventurous and more exciting sides is to do with University Centre Weston. We're now finding a number of younger people, particularly those engaged in the arts and in entrepreneurial activities, choosing to come to live in Weston. I think that's where the future of Weston lies. It's with the younger age group, not with my generation, which is constantly looking back to the old days. So we go in one direction or we go in the other direction. The motto on the Weston-super-Mare coat of arms is ever forward. So let's hope the younger generation is taking us in that direction.